And welcome to another edition of Unity in the Community. I'm Ernie Floyd. The Unity in the Community show embraces city versus diverse cultural communities, the music, the arts, and healthy lifestyles. And this program actually does exactly that, just the same. Our guest on this particular edition of Unity in the Community is going to share with us something unique, something that's maybe some people may not be aware of, and that's why we're going to have that. Because as the old adage is, knowledge is power, right?
Right.
There you go. So her name is Teri Frykenberg Dreyer, and she's a nationally recognized leader in professional patient advocacy, Amazon best-selling author, patient safety expert, a newspaper columnist, and a sought-after public speaker. Thank you for joining us. As a lifelong mentor, teacher, and champion for patients, Teri founded the Nurse Advocate Entrepreneur, that's what they say, to ensure everyone has access to quality private advocacy. And she believes that at the heart of every good nurse, physician, and social worker is the spirit of advocacy. And that private patient advocate are uniquely equipped to meet the future of healthcare beyond the hospital's walls. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, Randy. It's such an honor to be here today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So when we talked a little bit earlier prior to coming on here, and I mentioned to you, so when we're discussing what you do, generally a nurse, pursues the field, get their education, and then they go to the big physician or the big physical building in the sky there, right?
Right.
That's the target, right? To go to the big hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying that, still continue to aim for that. But you, meaning that person that's pursuing that, can be an entrepreneur or entrepreneur themselves and market themselves and create themselves or that occupation to be a business.
Absolutely.
That's interesting because the traditional way is, as I said, pursue the education and go work at the big hospital.
Right. And nurses are kind of socialized and educated to be employees. But I was an ICU nurse for 39 years. And when I saw healthcare changing about 2010, 2011, I said to my colleagues, I said, boy, this is not going to be good for patient safety, because it all became about bureaucracy and money and charting. And all of a sudden, instead of spending an hour to an hour and a half a day on the charting, all of a sudden we were spending 2/3 of every day on the computer, and the patients were really losing out because we didn't have as much time to spend on them. And it was all about move them through the system quickly. And I just saw a lot of medical error, a lot of preventable medical error. And I'm a real social justice person. I tell people that my whole advocacy career really started in Africa. I got invited to go in 2004 to South Africa and help with the AIDS pandemic. There were 18 million orphans there. What I saw there just really changed my life forever. And I just spent the next 15 years helping very impoverished areas and in many different countries, South Africa, Tanzania, Nigeria, Lesotho, and just doing entrepreneurial training and supporting women and children's issues in areas that really had no access. The first place I worked was so far out of in the country outside of Johannesburg that some of those children had never even seen white people before. I know that's hard to imagine, but my mom grew up in the back hills of West Virginia, and I thought I knew what poverty was, but yeah, most Americans have no idea whatsoever what real poverty from a worldwide perspective looks like, because the data shows that less than about 2% of the world is like America, like what we think of as America, but 98% of the world has a completely different definition of poverty. So I did that for 15 years as sort of a side gig while I was an ICU nurse. And then a few things happened personally and professionally that really made me realize that people were going to need help in the post-ACA world. And I believe in a lot of the good tenets of it. I'm not getting political here, but honestly, the Democrats or the Republicans have no idea how to change for the better health care. And so I just decided the problem was too big, and I was going to go out and start a business as a private professional patient advocate. And I've been able to save tons of money, saved tons of lives, helped support families since my first company in 2011 started. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done 3 nonprofits and 2 for-profit companies, and now I spend most of my time teaching, training doctors and nurses how to start their own professional advocacy business because, you know, anybody that's ever had a parent or a grandparent in healthcare over the last 10, 15 years, they know that healthcare is messed up.
Yeah, that's an interesting path that you went down, and interesting in the fact what you just shared with us.
Mhm,
Once again, this is Ernie Floyd. You listen to Unity in the Community, or
mhm.
Unity 979, which is Community Connection, and also joining us is Teri Frykenberg, and she created a company called the Nurse Advocate Entrepreneur. And in that, I find it interesting in your path, whereas you was in West Virginia, you mentioned earlier, and generally people when they go out to experience the world and they have this, we'll say they have this hat on their head and they go out and they say, look, I want to go save the world, you know, especially if you want to go into healthcare. And you go to the most deepest, darkest part of the planet and go over, you went to another country and you experience this whole thing. What drew you to Africa? What drew you to these other third world countries, as they would call it, to experience and say, okay, let me go and practice my medicine over there?
Well, it's a calling, a series of circumstances. I'm a woman of faith. Um, when I was 34 years old, I gave my life to the Lord, and I had a fellow Christian friend that had a pastor from South Africa, in Johannesburg. Actually, she was at the church where Nelson Mandela attended, and she said, "We have to do something. That people are dying on park benches. There's 18 million AIDS orphans," and I went over there and so it just really was a light bulb moment for me. But also, I realized that God gave me a voice for underserved people. And the underserved people over there, I worked with for a long time. And it's not that I don't care about people in America, it's just that they're so poor, they really can't help themselves over there. And I could tell so many stories, but I got so riled up about what I saw that I wrote to the Minister of Education and I said, "Hey, we've got kids here that are 12 years old taking care of 4 or 5 little brothers and sisters. They only come to school so they can get a half cup of porridge per day. They have no way of getting food except, you know, people in the community." And so we started doing a lot of entrepreneurial training and building and supporting. I still support a creche in South Africa. One of my best friends in the whole world is a little Xhosa lady named Sophie Ndamande. And Sophie is the most good to the bone person I've ever met. And she inspires me. She's a nurse that used to go from little shanty to little shanty, serving dying AIDS patients and supporting orphans. And so that just really kind of shook me out of my American slumber. And so it was a series of circumstances. I think God just really wanted me to show um, that I had a voice and that I could help the poorest of the poor in the world. But the people in America that are falling through the cracks, Ernie, are seniors and adults with disabilities, immigrants, LGBT, Q. I mean, there's a lot of people falling through the cracks. And now when healthcare is really all about money, you know, I really have a strong sense that that's just not right. And yes, people do hire private advocates as consultants for money, but most families can cobble together a couple $1,000s to help save their mom's life. And this is how I make my living. But more importantly, I think I can help more people throughout the country. Nurses and doctors are not happy about what healthcare has turned into. And a lot of them have great clinical experience and expertise that can be used to help save people's lives in the community. And professional patient advocates are kind of experts at patient rights. We protect patient rights no matter what background they come from. I think it's a real thing that in America we should all have equal quality as well as access. And what people don't realize about the way they built the ACA, yes, everybody can have Medicaid, but you can't force doctors to take on too many Medicaid patients because they lose money on that. The reimbursement rates for Medicaid and Medicare are so low that having access isn't the same thing as having quality doctors.
You're given two polarized situations between
Mhm.
America and the third world countries, which
Right.
you've experienced,
Mhm,
and they both have issues and they both have challenges.
mhm.
And so it seems as though you're here not necessarily to expose, but to educate us behind the scenes. If once you get that card, we take it for granted, we get that Medicaid card, and you
Mhm.
think it stops there, go to see a doctor, but it's more than that. Okay, we're
Oh,
going to come
yeah.
back. We're going to have this discussion once again. This is Unity in the Community. I'm Ernie Floyd, and joining us is Teri Frykenberg, and she is the founder of the Nurse Advocate Entrepreneur. You're not going to want to miss the information she's going to share with us because, especially nowadays with the way healthcare is now, you're going to
Mhm.
want to know this information to advocate for yourself. Once again, this is Ernie Floyd for Unity and Community. We'll
Mhm.
be right back on Unity 979, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hello, my name is Alvin Familia, president of the Manny 267 Foundation, and you are listening to Unity Radio, 97.9 FM, Worcester Community Connection.
Unity Radio, WUTY 97.9 FM, and streaming at WUTY979FM.org. We would like to thank our listeners and supporters.
The Summit Lounge, a private membership association. Moyna's Tavern of Worcester, a family business since 1935. And James Street Car Wash of Worcester.
Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection. Hi, I'm Ernie Floyd, host of the Unity in the Community Show on Unity Radio 97.9. Join me and my guest as we discuss topics on embracing our diverse cultural communities, the music, the arts, and healthy lifestyles. I'm Ernie Floyd, host of the Unity in the Community Show, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hi, I'm Storm, and I'm a part of the Bruce Wells Scholars Upward Bound program. The Upward Bound program is a program that helps many promising low-income, first-generation, college-bound Worcester High School students. After joining this program, I've learned many different and important life skills while making new connections and getting real-world experiences through internships and classes. If you're interested in any of these opportunities, you can find more information at www.sevenhills.org or 617-866-1293. That's www.sevenhills.org or 617-866-1293. A brighter future begins with you.
What's up, Worcester? It's your boy AG, better known as Angelo Gray. And you're listening to Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection.
And welcome back to Unity in the Community. I'm Ernie Floyd. The Unity in the Community Show embraces city versus diverse cultural communities, the music, the arts, and healthy lifestyles. And it's a privilege and an honor to have Teri Frykenberg come in to visit us here. She's the founder. She founded the Nurse Advocate Entrepreneur, and she wants to pursue everyone has access to quality and private advocacy when it comes to nursing and health and healthcare. And she just shared with us her story when she went to across the world. And you're serving some of those countries and those nations in their poor communities, and you've seen some things, okay? And then the light bulb went off in your head to come back to the States and to create some advocacy in reference to, okay, how do we support these people that are who have succumbed to poverty? And you may have an answer for that. And also, you're going to share with us too that not to shame any of the hospitals or shame the practice,
Right.
but also this is reality too as well. You may get one side of it, you may not know the other side,
Right.
but you will know it eventually if you're going to continue to practice in that field,
Right.
more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to. And a lot of the decisions that are being made in the government for the past 10 years don't really understand what real people are going through. And right now in America, because of the cutbacks and everything, a lot of smaller hospitals in rural areas are going out of business, just like they did 10, 15 years ago. They had predicted that the least profitable and least efficient hospitals would go out of business. And yes, there is a certain amount of waste and fraud. And I've seen more fraud and deception and scamming and everything over the past 10, 15 years than I've ever seen in my life. Because once you make healthcare really all about money, then people cut corners and they figure out how to do it legally. And right now, I feel like insurance companies and big pharma are the only big institutions that are actually making money. A lot of hospitals that were operating at a 2 to 3% profit margin before 2010 are now running way negative. I mean, they're losing money. You can't tell which hospitals are losing money by looking at the exterior. And they've cut back so much inside the hospital that nurses and doctors are just angry, that they can't morally, ethically give the kind of care that people deserve, because it's all about move them out, move them out. And the insurance companies really dictate when people have to leave the hospital. And so that's when people call in a patient advocate like myself, because they're looking at mom or dad who can't in any way, shape, or form take care of themselves. And then the hospital care managers come to them and say, okay, well, the insurance is only going to give us 2 more days. So here's a list of 25 facilities. You tell us where you want mom or dad to go. But they don't know the quality of the different places. And there's a huge difference out there in the underserved, the impoverished community. You might have nice carpeting and stuff in the lobby, but once you get into the patients' rooms, it's horrendous, the kind of things that go on. And I worked in Chicago for most of the last 15 years. I've just been in Massachusetts for a couple of years, but during COVID particularly, I stood up to hospitals over and over again and said, this isn't right. You're violating my patients' rights, and they have a right to a safe discharge. And so we know how to use the right kind of language to stall those early discharges that could kill people, really.
Yeah. So if you're not there actually to assist in improving that healthcare in that particular patient at whatever particular dwelling they're located at,
Mhm.
they're basically just navigating out in waters by themselves, basically, right?
Yeah.
And or if they have a family
Mhm.
member that's close that may know or have the understanding of what they call the game and what's going on.
Mhm.
Other than that, and sometimes depending upon the dynamics of the family, they may not have any family members there to support them.
Right.
They get there.
Mhm.
We don't know how they get there. They eventually get to a bed and they get
Mm.
there, but no one's there to advocate for them. And those hospitals know that.
Mhm.
And so, and also I find it fascinating where, you have your two medical, are they medical? They're not medical facilities, but we'll just say your CVS's and your Walgreens, okay,
Mhm.
at every corner per
Mhm.
se. But then you notice that some of them are closing. And it's like,
Mhm.
you would think that they were money makers, CVS and the Walgreens of the world, and just other ones that are across the country. But you see them closing. I'm like, why is those particular stores closing?
Mhm.
Where they're essential for our health and where we live in those particular neighborhoods. I find that pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, it's very complex. My ex-husband used to work for CVS. PBM, prescription benefit companies, are all about trimming off all the fat. And if a place is not profitable, they close down. And unfortunately, a lot of the places that aren't profitable are in the poor neighborhoods. And so then what options do they have? And you don't even know where all of the resources are. That's one thing that patient advocates do quite often. In fact, I have a doctor as a student right now. He's a doctor in Western Illinois, and he himself has a serious form of ulcerative colitis. So he needs a medication that costs $2,000 a month. And so I had to talk to him and walk him through all of the different support companies that are rising up, foundations around the country, like the National Patient Advocacy Foundation. There's a million. There's more and more and more. Mark Cuban has one on Amazon, and there are just a lot of companies out there that are supporting people that really they have to choose between eating or having a life-saving medication. And when you have a serious immune deficiency disease like ulcerative colitis, you're non-functional if you don't get your medicine. I mean, you could die from bleeding, and it's just really scary out there. And the people in the government aren't seeing all these people that we see. It's really heartbreaking what's going on. And it's so complex politically and financially that I decided to leave the hospital when I almost got fired for advocating for a patient. A surgeon tried to have me fired. It was actually a beautiful, beautiful African-American lady. She was a banker in downtown Chicago, highly educated family. And I just fell in love with this family. And the doctor was just neglecting all kinds of complications she was having. And I went to him one day and I said, Dr. Smith, help me understand why you're not sending her for interventional studies and more x-rays, because she keeps having these massive bleeding episodes. And he got real defensive and threw a chart at me. And long story short, I was right. I saved the patient's life. But the hospital, the day after a 4-hour code where I gave her 28 units of blood after I basically went downstairs and rescued her against the doctor's wishes and put my neck on the line. And I said to the daughter, if this was my mom, this is what I'd do. I'd go down, talk to risk management and administration and say, if you're not going to send my mom back to ICU, then, I'm going to call my lawyer. And it's sad when it gets to that point, but people are falling through the cracks right, left, and sideways. And if somebody doesn't understand the rules of the game or the questions to ask, people are really at risk. I had a client out here, actually in Worcester, last year. It was an 83-year-old man that went in for a simple procedure, and they had the residents do the procedure. It caused a lot of blood clots to go up to his brain. So he started having all kinds of psychiatric issues and seizures the next day, and they quick shuttled him off to a nursing home where he spiked a fever of 104 and started being combative. So we got him back to the hospital, but they tied that man down in the emergency room hallway in restraints for 4 days and gave him antipsychotic medication instead of getting to the bottom of why he was having all these problems, because you get people that are really struggling and falling through the cracks. You have to know how to talk to the right people in the hospital.
I find it interesting. Teri Frykenberg is joining us. She's recognized as a leader in professional patient advocacy. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today. And there's a lot of people who are probably, I wouldn't say probably, some markets, some families, market meaning depending upon where you live, and the communities and also the families. They're going through a lot of different things. And I can't help but say the fact that there's an old adage out there that says knowledge is power. And you have to have the knowledge and understanding of what's going on when it comes to the healthcare and it comes to the whole entire industry. And I find it interesting you telling these stories. And I know that you got to the point where you're advocating for the practitioners or the nurses to start their own business.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about how they can start their own business versus working for a particular hospital, but also through your advocacy in reference to what you created. You're a nurse advocate, entrepreneur, to ensure everyone has access to quality private care. And that's what it's all about eventually. That's what it says. That's what they say on the top, right? So we're going to come back. We're going to continue this discussion with Teri Frykenberg. I'm Ernie Floyd, and you're listening to Unity in the Community on Unity 979, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hey, this is Ricky Duran, and you're listening to Unity Radio on 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Graham Anderson, also known as Positively Suzanne, host of Black in Business, Thursdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9. Black in Business is a series of conversations with influential members of the Black business community. These entrepreneurs knows what it means to risk everything to create successful businesses and spark positive changes in the community. So join us. Again, I'm Suzanne Graham Anderson, also known as Positively Suzanne, right here on Black in Business, Thursdays at 5 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection.
Unity Radio, WUTY 97.9 FM, and streaming at WUTY979FM.org. We would like to thank our listeners and supporters.
Grill on the Hill at Green Hill Park, Worcester. Best Buy, a chain retailer with a large array of brand name electronics, computers, appliances, and more. And Canterbury Automotive of Worcester.
Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
Activa la radio y Unity Radio 97.9 FM te invitan a escuchar el bloque latino todos los sábados de 7 de la mañana hasta la 1 de la tarde por los 97.9 FM en la ciudad de Worcester.
You're listening to Unity 97.9 FM, WUTY, Worcester.
And welcome back to Unity in the Community. I'm Ernie Floyd, and joining us is Teri Frykenberg, and she's recognized leader in professional patient advocacy, and she believes that the heart of every good nurse, physician, and social worker is the spirit of advocacy. And you shared some stories with us, and I'll admit to you that I've heard these stories in the past, okay, in reference to people visiting the third world countries and coming back to the States, and everything has its... This is a perspective, right? Between what's poor over there in the third world countries and what's poor here in the States. And you've seen it all, okay? But a light went off in your head and said, you know something? I want you to share with us like the traditional way. If someone says, I want to get into healthcare, because I've heard that before. I work with young people. They go, I want to get into healthcare. And go, why? Well, because my mom was sick and my dad was sick and I didn't know how to take care of them. And the stories go on. Oh, I just want to help people in general. Okay. So give us a little rundown in reference to almost like an organizational chart. If a person has the aspiration to pursue the health field in that regards. So if you're in high school, just give a little bit like, if you're in high school, you do this, but by the time you go to college, you do that. But by the time you graduate, you may go into a health facility on that particular career track. But you're saying you can go further by being an advocate. Is that right? As an entrepreneur.
Yes.
All right. So let's start from the beginning then.
Well, there's more freedom being an entrepreneur, first of all. People come to us when they encounter something in their own personal life or their family's lives that's just over their head to deal with. They know something's not right going on in the hospital. They're not sure what, but they're scared. And so they'll call us and we go in and talk medical talk and read the charts and look at the x-rays and the labs, and we can figure out pretty quickly what's going on. And a lot of times we see things that aren't right ethically too. So professional advocates come from a variety of different backgrounds. Not all of us are doctors or nurses, but I think if you have medical complexity, I think it's always a really good idea to hire a nurse or a doctor that's very street smart about healthcare. Like a 22-year-old nurse is probably not going to want to go into patient advocacy, even though I will say that over 50% of new nurses graduating are leaving the field entirely by the time 1 year comes about. So a lot of new young nurses just can't handle the culture shock of what it's really like. You learn one thing in school. And let's be honest, a lot of nurses that went through training during COVID never touched a patient. It was all online. So when they get out and all of a sudden, instead of having 5 or 6 patients, they have 10 or 15 patients, and they have all that documentation and they're working 12-hour shifts and doing 2 hours extra of charting every day. It's a real shock. What I'm talking about is the nurses and doctors that have been doing this for decades, and they know the way healthcare is supposed to be practiced, and they're suffering moral injury, and they're stressed out all the time that administration is all the time forcing them to take care of more patients so that they can really safely take care of. Doctors in the hospital, most doctors are employees of hospitals right now. So you really can't advocate strongly for patients when you're an employee of a system. Like, people always ask me, what's the difference between a hospital patient advocate and a private patient advocate? I say, follow the money. It's all about the allegiance factor. When a private individual or family hires me to protect their mom or dad, I don't owe the hospital or the doctor anything. I'm going to go in and talk politely and professionally, but I'm going to ask those kind of questions so they understand I'm an experienced ICU nurse. I know where the gaps are. I know where the negligence is. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And there's a lot of things that I can tell about a patient just by reading the chart for 5 or 10 minutes and looking at the machines in their rooms. So when we come in privately, we're being paid directly by the family. So our allegiance is to them. So we're going to fight for their rights and their safety and their health and their lives, just like a nurse in the family would. And I think good doctors and nurses want to be strong advocates, but people are getting fired for advocating for patients in the hospital, just like that surgeon tried to have me fired because I found out he was doing something that was not right. I didn't get fired because bottom line was I didn't do anything wrong, but during a 4-hour code, I neglected to sign out a dose of morphine, and he tried to accuse me of being a drug abusing nurse because I was hanging blood so fast. So I talk to nurses all the time that say, yeah, we see that all the time. We see nurses are expendable if they rock the boat or become whistleblowers. But I guess I'm just that kind of person that can't look the other way. And that's where a lot of doctors and nurses are saying, I can't do this anymore, but I still love being a doctor or a nurse. So they kind of pivot into the entrepreneurial space and start their own business so they can still save lives. They're just not going to do it in the same way.
That's interesting. Teri Frykenberg, she's joining me on Unity and Community. I'm Ernie Floyd on Unity 979. And you're giving some incredible insight in reference to the healthcare industry and information. And it cast this dark cloud over the situation. And our listeners are listening to this attentively because I know there's someone out there that's going through something. And in some instances too, there's another side of the coin too. Okay.
Right.
And the other side is the fact that not everybody's going through this. So I want to be able to say that.
Right.
But at the same time, you want to be aware that potentially, okay, if you are to come across a situation of this nature, which you're explaining to us, you're there. And tell us how people can reach you. So in case if someone is going through something at the hospital and they feel as though, you know something, my mom, my dad, my cousin, whoever, it's not just being taken care of very well. And I just don't know the language and how to reach that hospital. And I have, where else am I going to, I can't go in and wheel her or wheel him out of there.
Right.
And I have to suffice to whatever they're sharing with me, but I have this strong feeling it's not the right thing. So if someone's going through that, how can they find you, Teri Frykenberg?
Sure. You can go to my website, which is nurseadvocateentrepreneur.com. You can book a free 30-minute call with me. If you are a healthcare provider that you're looking to kind of pivot your career as you get older and still keep your foot in it and take on private consulting clients, then I'll talk to you about that too. I just think it's a shame to have so many really good-hearted doctors and nurses just leaving just disillusioned and burned out. And burnout for doctors and nurses right now and suicide is at an all-time high. So we're talking about people that want to help others and they're getting burned out because their hands are tied a lot of times, and it's not their fault. And I'm not blaming administration either, because if they don't watch the bottom line, the hospital is going to go out of business.
It's a ripple effect,
Yeah, it
basically,
is.
and it
It
starts from
is.
the top,
Right.
and then once it starts from the top, it trickles down, of course.
Yeah.
And actually, on an everyday basis, we can actually see it happening. But like I said, you can go down the street, you can go down Park Ave, you can go down
Mhm.
here in Worcester, you can go down Main Street, and you can see there always was a pharmacy, if you will, at every corner. Okay, such as i.e. CVS or Walgreens.
Mhm.
But then all of a sudden, you see that a particular company is closing, and you see the dark shadow where letters used to be up on the wall there, and you're like, why is that? I thought that thing made money. I thought that was like the heart of everything. All my medicines in there, all my healthcare is in there. I go there for my for everything.
Mhm.
How's that place closed? I find it pretty fascinating. But what you're sharing with us is that's how it is closed. If it's not making the bottom line, and you
Right.
mentioned in the urban communities,
Mhm.
right? It's not making money,
Right.
unfortunately, so they close it.
Yeah.
So they have to place them or keep those open. That obviously does making money. But most importantly, that you're here because you believe that the heart of every good nurse and physician and the social worker is the spirit of advocacy. And so
Mhm.
it's almost like you've given them another second way of life of saving people and
Right.
supporting people in a sense. And
Absolutely.
you feel that way.
Yeah, it's the most rewarding form of nursing that I've ever practiced. And it's easier on my body, it's easier on my emotions. I have better work life balance. I have complete agency. I can practice ethical values in my work. My values in my company have always been fanatical integrity, passionate service, and continual growth and improvement. And that's because it's my company. Nobody's going to tell me how to give good advice to people who are struggling right now. And I just think it's the most rewarding thing ever. We hear so many people just thanking us to the high heavens, saying we could never have figured this out on our own.
Oh, not at all. And that goes across any particular practice, whatever that is here that anybody is experiencing. Once again, as I said before, the adage is knowledge is power. And I really thank you for coming in because our
Sure.
listeners, the reason why I created Unity in the Community is not only to inform, but also to educate.
Right.
It's really important because I'm in the field, whereas I work with individuals or families as well.
Mhm.
And I provide the service that's provided for me that I in exchange provide for the service to those families and those youth. But I'm on the surface, okay? I'm not even really in there in the trenches, as you will, as you are when it comes to the health part. I may say, okay, I may offer a gift card, okay? All right, I'm helping there. I may offer clothing,
Yeah.
food, like I said, I'm on the surface, and that may hold over that family for that situation at that particular time. But when it comes to the healthcare, there's no joke.
Yeah.
When you have an ill family member, and it really hits the family hard, and the fact that, especially when it's the matriarch person in the family that's kept that family together, and then and they have to go through what we have to go through to try to survive and support that family member, and hopefully on the surface too, you believe that people have a heart and have ethics.
Yeah.
And you feel as though that your family member is going to get that excellent care, right? No matter what. But then again, it's the dark side that you're sharing with us here as well. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is really sad, but professional advocates help fill all the gaps in modern healthcare today. We not only save lives, we save tons of money. I remember in 5 minutes, I once saved somebody $60,000 in their medical bill. And we have professional patient advocates that just do insurance and save hundreds of thousands of dollars for people. So we just love getting the win. So think of us like a cross between an advanced practice nurse, a patient right expert, and a guard dog.
You guys are really getting aggressive out there. And I can only imagine that, okay, you come in, you knock on the door, and you flap your cape over your shoulder, and you say, hey, I'm here to save the family. I'm here to save you as well. And it's incredible how you have that attentive when everyone's just sitting there listening to you, right? And you have the capsulation of the whole family saying, really? Do you know what's going on? Yeah, we believe it's this, that, and this. And you're like, no, it's not that. It's really this. And they go, really? I say, yeah. And then you sit there and you say, this is how we can go about it. There is a solution. And that's where you come in like that too. So as I said before, you're an advocate person, not only just an advocate, but also you can turn your advocacy and being an entrepreneur as well. And there's some benefits out there. what you're
Oh,
sharing with us.
absolutely,
And that's what
absolutely.
you're happy about sharing with us. Okay. So
Mhm.
well, we're going to come back. We're going to continue the discussion on how Teri Frykenberg can line you up to be a professional patient advocate. And at the same time, you make a good living at it too, right?
Mhm.
And most importantly, you're there to advocate for that family and make a difference in their lives
Mhm.
and take all that trauma, hopefully, off their shoulders and go away, especially in the holiday season too,
Mhm.
as well. Okay. So when we come back, Teri Frykenberg is joining me. I'm Ernie Floyd, and you listen to Unity in the Community, or Unity 979, Worcester's
Mhm.
Community Connection.
Unity Radio.
Just kicking around, we discovered a love that had never been found.
Worcester, we've got you.
Hi, I'm Ernie Floyd, host of the Unity in the Community Show on Unity Radio 97.9. Join me and my guest as we discuss topics on embracing our diverse cultural communities, the music, the arts, and healthy lifestyles. I'm Ernie Floyd, host of the Unity in the Community Show, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. on Unity Radio 97.9, Worcester's Community Connection.
Hello, I'm Pastor Sharon Henderson of Covenant St. Andrew's United Methodist Church, 24 Hamilton Street, Worcester, Mass. We welcome you to worship with us every Sunday at 10 a.m. Let's worship together and love one another. I'm Sharon Henderson, pastor of Covenant St. Andrew's United Methodist Church, 24 Hamilton Street. We welcome you to worship with us at 10 a.m. every Sunday. Let's do it together and let's make peace.
Are you ready?
Hi, I'm Gary.
And I'm Steve.
And we're the host of Cannabis 101 on Unity Radio 97.9 FM.
Join us and our guests on Thursdays at 3 p.m. as we discuss the cannabis industry in Central Mass with energy, excitement, and passion.
We both take pride in providing you important information about the rapid growing cannabis industry. Support for Cannabis 101 is provided by Cannabis of Worcester on Unity Radio 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection.
You're listening to Unity Radio, Worcester's Community Connection.
And welcome back to Unity in the Community. I'm Ernie Floyd. Teri Frykenberg is joining us. She's a nationally recognized leader in professional patient advocacy. And she's joining us in giving all the sides when it comes to healthcare. And we know that at some point or another, we're going to be taking care of a family member and at home. And then eventually they might transition into a hospital in some case. And in some instances, you're going to have that doctor with ethics and you're going to get that great care. Not just good care in some instances, just that great care.
Yeah.
But there might be an instance where you might be in a situation where you're thinking you're getting great care and you just don't know and understand what's being mentioned to you. But in your gut, you feel like something is not right. And that's where you come in, Teri, where you help to turn, not only being part of the advocacy is being a passion for your patient care and thriving advocacy business, but you're after the seasoned person. So not the early bird, we'll say, who's coming out of high school, who's coming out of college, and is just entering into a healthcare facility, right?
Yeah.
You want them to go there,
Right.
wherever that place may be.
Oh, yeah.
You got to experience it, whether if it's here in the States, across the country, or in the third world countries. You got to get in there. And then what's going to happen is you're going to circle back and you're going to say, wow, what just happened here? And then that's when you empower them with your service. And talk about your service again.
Sure. So I talk to nurses and doctors every week that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. They're seasoned.
And you're giving them hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they just really feel so frustrated. And so when I come and start teaching and training them, they come to my website, they look at the different options for training, and they say, yes, I want to be in your next class. And so we get together for 13 weeks. And we have a little cohort, small class of like 8 to 15 professionals get together. We watch a pre-recorded video that I've done, and then we come together for mentoring. And it's very powerful to have a tribe that's going through the same thing that you are right now. Occasionally I get nurses that just want one-on-one with me, and I can do that with them too. But I've made all the mistakes, Ernie, over 15 years as a business person, and I've figured out who to talk to about this field and what kind of referral partners we need. I work with attorneys quite a bit. I don't like to see hospitals get sued at all, but I know what kinds of things to talk to family about if they're just angry and they come to me and they say, I want to sue them. Well, it's not that easy anymore. So then I have to do education. Most people in America don't have enough health literacy, no matter how educated they are, because about 20, 30 years ago, hospitals decided that education of patients didn't pay. So they did away with a lot of education departments. But we as advocates come in and we're able to empower the patients because our experience and expertise has taught us how to talk to doctors, how to ask the right questions, what the different labs mean. We can even, look at x-rays and say, oh yeah, what about this? And then when they come in and tell the family, well, we need to do this or we need to do that. I want to say sometimes, who is the we? Because the patient and the family are the center of the model of care. It's their choice. You don't come in and force them to do certain things because everybody needs to have agency over their own lives.
Is there another path to whereas another approach whereas you mentioned the government earlier, okay? There's you have your people that are up in the candidacy and they're pushing, they may have a company that may approach that candidate, okay, that politician, right? And they'll say, okay, in your community, we want to push this particular drug and we want you to pass it by law and the lobbyists and the list goes on. And then it trickles down to the doctor, going back to what you're just saying right now, saying, okay, we want to put you over here and try this. And that's probably pushing it because that particular advocate for the drug company is coming in and saying, hey, we're experimenting, we're using this drug. We think this patient, or do you think any patient that you have can benefit from this? And the doctor's like, oh, okay. May not do their history, but just here on the surface that, okay, this patient falls in line with what you say it is to be. And so they're experimenting with drugs on people sometimes too as well.
Well, yes and no. I used to work in stem cell transplant after I worked in ICU for 30 some years. And the drug reps would come in and bring in these great big elaborate lunches. And we'd get so frustrated because we had to take time away from our patients to come and listen to their spiel. But doctors were highly motivated to order these drugs. And now they have a lot of laws on the books that say, oh yeah, you can't even accept a pen from a drug rep. You cannot go out to all these big fancy presentations. So there are some new legislation out there, but getting back to politics, no matter what side you're on, politicians don't want to touch healthcare. It's a hot topic. People are very angry about it. And I've tried myself and other advocates have tried to start bills and Massachusetts still doesn't have a compact agreement and almost every other state in the union does. Illinois and Massachusetts don't have the law that says that nurses with one nursing license can practice in any state in the union, but it's all been fighting politically back and forth all the time. And the people that are making these decisions just don't know who it affects. And that's the frustrating part. So I think a lot of good advocates have tried to get into political advocacy before, but most of the politicians are like, no, that's a hot topic. I'm staying away from anything too controversial.
Well, we've had some major health facilities, which I'm not going to name, but people here in the city of Worcester have seen and have heard, I would say, at least on the surface when they ride by and they see the nurses picketing outside of a healthcare facility. And they may not really know or understand why they're picketing outside the healthcare facility. But with the knowledge you're providing us and what you've spoken earlier, I can only imagine that something that you said probably plays a role in why those nurses were picketing out there. And I believe here in the city of Worcester, we may have had a record-breaking picketing situation here because of a particular hospital, and we really don't know why they were picketing per se, unless you go behind the lines there and find out what's going on. But I can only imagine what you're saying. Some of it had had something involving that?
A lot of it has to do with the nurses getting so angry about the way they're treated by hospitals that they've tried to talk things out and said, this is what we need for better working conditions, because we're really focused on the patients. We want the patients to be safe, but you're making us take twice as many patients as is safe. And during COVID, let's be honest, I mean, nurses were making exorbitant amounts of money. That kind of money isn't going to last.
Right.
I mean, that was like nurses were able to travel and make $400,000 or $500,000 a year if they wanted to. Well, that's not sustainable for anybody. And so nurses got used to making a lot of money. So the money that they're making now is still higher than it was before. But when I left 39 years of ICU nursing in 2011, I was making like $45 an hour. You know, I make 4 or 5 times that amount now per hour. And I'm just using my knowledge and expertise, which is much more enjoyable. I don't have to kill my back. I've had 4 joint replacements so far. I don't have to undergo all the stress of the bureaucracy and spend 2/3 of my day on the computer. I don't have to do things that I know are morally and ethically wrong. And if there's one thing that hospitals could do in this country that would make doctors and nurses so much happier and stay, is to cut the computer time down by 2/3 at least, because nobody has time to read any of that stuff anyway. They just copy and paste it, and then that leaves them open to liability too. So a lot of these things that the government in their infinite wisdom thought was, you know, going to make for safer care, it's not. It's making for less safe care because you're taking doctors or nurses away from the patients.
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier. I think in one instance, I believe I heard that the nurses are really frustrated because their caseload, in a sense, their patient load. One particular person may come on the shift. It's either one or two things: the shift is long, and you're also increasing my patient load like that. And they've expressed their frustration. It's falling upon deaf ears, and the whole group that says, you know, something has to give in some instances. And I think that's probably what was happening. And some of not only here, but it happens across the country. Teri Frykenberg, thank you for joining us. Nationally recognized leader in professional patient advocacy. You join us. You have you're a best-selling author too, patient safety expert, a newspaper columnist, and a sought-after public speaker. And you so eloquently was able to share a lot of information in layman's term. I really appreciate that too as well. And before we go, what's the future for you, basically, after this?
Well, I feel like my calling in life is to teach and train as many doctors and nurses into becoming professional advocates as possible. That's my legacy, and I find it very, very rewarding. The more advocates I can get out on the streets to help save people's lives, the more people I can help.
Okay, once again, how can they find you?
My website is Nurse Advocate Entrepreneur. You can reach out to me there and schedule a meeting. I give 30-minute free consultations all the time. I talk to doctors, nurses, family members, patients, anybody that's in trouble, frustrated, and is fascinated by the possibilities that this field offers is welcome to call me. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, and thank you for seeking us out here on Unity in the Community. Teri Frykenberg, once again, nationally recognized leader in professional patient advocacy. She believes that the heart of every good nurse, physician, and social worker is the spirit of advocacy. And thank you for joining us again, okay?
Thank you, Ernie, so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Once again, you've been listening to Unity in the Community on Unity 979, Worcester's Community Connection.